estables como mismos. Por el lado de las
Holy,
exportaciones,
holy,
China
holy.
actualmente es el país que más
Um,
productos vende a nivel
I just
mundial, con
restarted the
más de
stream because my camera
3.500 millones de dólares, y sin embargo su economía está dejando
had
de
been
crecer. Por lo tanto, China
stopped
solo tiene un
by
camino a seguir si quiere continuar creciendo, y es el consumo.
Streamlabs,
El antiguo
and
modelo,
I had
aquel que comenzó a partir de las reformas de mercado en
I was doing like a
1979 de
shitty face,
construir
like I
y
was doing a
construir,
grimace. Je pense
ya
I
no
was like,
funciona.
I think I was
China
like
pasó de
kind
ser
of
un
being
país
like, yeah, that
mediocre con
works.
millones de
And I
personas
was like
sumergidas en la
stuck on
pobreza
a
a
really weird
convertirse en
face,
la segunda potencia
which
económica del
doesn't matter,
mundo.
but like,
Sin embargo, la
I
realidad
thought might as
muestra
well
que el
just restart
milagro
it as I
chino estaría
noticed.
llegando a su fin. Si los chinos no comienzan a tener más hijos para
um,
que su población deje de envejecer, los jóvenes comiencen a trabajar
Los
y el
jóvenes.
gobierno decida dejar de gastar dinero en proyectos inútiles, puede que esa tasa de menos del
I need
1% de pobreza a la
to
que llegaron en
find what that could
2020
be.
comience a aumentar rápidamente.
Not everything can be gay, I
Esperamos que te haya
guess.
gustado el vídeo. Si es así, nos ayudaría muchísimo que nos dejases un comentario, ya
So
que
I
la
don't know.
red
I'll have to
neuronal de
find
YouTube
more.
esto lo
Like this
valora
is
muchísimo y así
downtown.
recomiendan
What
nuestros vídeos a
what
más gente. Le
flags
dieses
could
a
we have
like y actives
downtown?
la campanita para que te llegue una notificación cuando subamos nuestro próximo vídeo.
Could be
Así
an
que nos vemos
embassy
en él. Un saludo.
or a biblioteca. Um, what's next? Ooh, the secret Chinese companies that owns.
Can I have a quick show of hands? Who's heard of Tencent?
Oh yeah,
Great
Tencent,
start.
the secret Chinese company.
If you look at the
Where did
world's most
you?
valuable
Where have you been
companies,
for the
you
last
won't be
fucking 20
surprised to
years?
find the likes of Apple, Microsoft, and Google. But
What is
one name does
that?
stand out: Tencent.
Ooh, Tencent.
The company is worth.
The secret Chinese company, Tencent. Yeah, well, wake up. Those fucking journalists, where have they been? They've been living under a rock, and because they learned something in 2024, they're like, oh my god, this is new. It's been around for like 20 years. Wake up, you dumb bitch. Ah, la la. Smart people. What was it like? I can't remember. I was watching something yesterday, and same. They were like just coming out of nowhere. I was like, you only. Oh yeah, the psychology of money. And like, I guess for America, it makes sense. Well, he seems smart to sell a book telling all that shit, but I'm like, that's kind of basic, people. Like, you've been living the American dream for so long, you can't even understand reality. You're just lost in your fucking dream, and now you're waking up, and we're like supposed to upload. Like, you've been delusional for all that time, and you think that getting in touch with reality makes you smart. Whoa. Hello. Wake up. Maybe one day, if you can have money to buy a book that says basic shit, that so shows how fucking lost you are. And I'm saying that about America because it's the American dream, but fucking Australia is exactly the same. They're also fucking lost, and France, like some people are just. I think they're more in touch with reality, but the reality from like 20, 30 years ago. So we have like a delay while they live in a completely different world. Like that was like they have like a 100-year delay. Like they're still living in the industrial revolution. Like we have internet now. I know you know because you're posting a shitload of selfies, but man, you should um, turn on your brain and start thinking instead of just consuming. But that's the American dream. What can we do? What can we do? And but the great thing for them is that they're making money out of obvious things because everyone is so far from Earth. Like they need to. That's kind of funny because most people can't do critical thinking. When someone does, it's like, whoa, he's the Messiah. Whoa. Well, I guess if we're going, oh yeah, I haven't listened to that. I fell asleep before.
And to Spain, where authorities in the northeast of the country have declared a drought emergency for the city of Barcelona.
Emergency! It's been 20 years!
As Catalonia suffers
Well,
its
nothing
worst
new, but
ever
like.
drought. Around 6 million people
Oh,
are facing tight water
let's
restrictions.
put
As
the
a 3-year dry period shows no sign
the Spanish flag. Let's instead of
After being
star
submerged
cuts,
for more than 60 years, this medieval church reappeared. It is now a symbol of 3 years of drought that have parched Catalonia. The lack of rain has brought reservoirs to record low levels.
yeah.
The drought is evident across the region. The ski resorts opened this winter have little snow on the slopes.
In Spain, ski resorts in Spain.
A very critical situation. Very critical because if there's no snow, if it doesn't rain and there's no thaw,
That's a bit.
the reservoirs instead of growing
Come on,
get
guys.
smaller and smaller.
A campaign to reduce water
Oh, it
waste
says
started months ago.
VG.
The government explained how critical the situation has become. It detailed the unprecedented measures triggered when water reserves dropped below the 16% threshold. The new measures will affect citizens and businesses. Swimming pools, including those used by hotels and campgrounds, cannot be refilled. Only sports centers can refill them if they reduce their total amount of water consumption.
Which is
Many
good.
have already prepared for the restrictions.
The main measures are the showers, lowering the pressure in the showers.
Under pressure.
Showers, how the hot water reaches the showers.
It's not the same. Oh, that's
Possible.
so.
In a few
Okay,
towns,
that's
fully
the old
dependent
one.
wells,
Okay.
taps have been shut off for some months. A father of 3 explains the headaches involved.
Imagine cleaning, washing clothes, cooking. You can't wash dishes, you can't wash clothes, and I'm not even going to say washing machine. You can't even pee because there's no water.
If rain clouds don't show up, water restrictions will keep getting tighter, while many fear things will get even worse this summer.
Yes.
Pick this up with DW
That's
reporter
the trend.
Louise Troyes, who filed that report, and DW climate correspondent Louise Osborne. Welcome both. Lara, we were just hearing that poor man can't even pee. It's really bad.
He means that he cannot flush the bathroom anymore. But indeed, it's been.
Oh,
3
really?
months
That's what it
without rain for
means?
Now, and up until the moment,
Okay.
it was only a few towns with these severe restrictions. But what changes now is that more than 6 million people will be affected because it's areas close to Barcelona and close to Girona that will be affected. The government has decided to move to the phase 1 of these emergency plans, and this includes a series of measures. Let's look at it. Citizens will be allowed to access 200 liters per day. This is more than the average consumption, but will affect shops and small businesses too. Other measures vary across sectors. The worst affected is agriculture because crop irrigation will be reduced by 80%. Livestock activities will have a 50% cut, industries a 25% reduction.
And there you go.
And
Once
then
I go back to
recreational
Unity,
facilities such as
the
amusement and
camera
water
is
parks, a
not
25 cut. So it's a wide
Come on,
range of
why
measures.
is
And
Streamlabs so
just to give
fucking
you an idea
painful?
of the environment in Catalonia,
At least I don't have a weird
I
face.
realized how serious the situation was when I went to Barcelona over Christmas. I arrived to the airport and the first thing I saw was a big billboard telling me we are experiencing a severe drought. Please be aware of the water use that you do.
Okay, so Louise,
Oh, thank you,
this is all
Nestle.
your fault. Why are we
So you
seeing
can
this
sell
long dry
more
spell?
bottled water
Well,
to
I mean,
people.
this is one of the impacts of climate change that we're seeing. So climate change is obviously leading to higher temperatures. We're seeing heat waves that are longer and hotter. And this means an evaporation of water from the ground, which is then, in the air. Unfortunately, in some regions, it's not then falling as rainfall. And so we are seeing more frequent and worse droughts as a result, particularly in regions like the Mediterranean.
Right. I'm just thinking that this goes beyond just this region, though, doesn't it? Because I know that for the last year, 2 years, we've seen agricultural products out of Spain, the prices going through the roof because of this. Tell us more about how people are reacting.
Yeah, the south of Spain, Andalusia, is also experiencing a similar situation, quite bad. People, we will see now when a lot of people will be affected, what happens. There has been a lot of preparation. The government is talking about collective effort. They are thanking for the patience and that everybody understands that it's quite severe. And many have been preparing themselves. For example, hotels have changed the water in their pools to salty water. Some farmers have decided to cut down the number of fruits they produce that need a lot of water, tomatoes, watermelons. Let's see, once you cannot turn on your tap at home, or you go to your sports center and you cannot take a shower, it might get a bit more tense.
So, Louise Osborne, tell us then about some of the technical solutions that there are to this.
So there are some technologies that are already being used in the region. Desalination is one of them, for example. This is where the salt is taken out of seawater and can be used for drinking or for agriculture. The problem with it is that it's energy intensive, so the electricity used for it is then contributing to the problem really by pushing more CO2 out into the atmosphere, and it's expensive. There are other technologies as well, like artificial intelligence, which are helping to manage water better, so that farmers, for example, know exactly which plants need water so that they can save more.
Right, so no more rain predicted.
Not for February, and the more we approach summer, the more difficult it gets. So we might see tighter measures in some months.
Okay, thank you so much for talking us through that. Laura Ruiz Troyons and Louise Osborne. Thank you both.
Okay, that's all. 3 people to tell us there's no water. What can't we just?
Spanish vacations mean sizzling heat and cooling water, pools by the beach, and in the city center.
It's nice to relax by the pool in the afternoon.
Tourism consumes vast amounts of water, while locals live with water rationing.
Tourists use on average 3 to 5 times more water than Barcelona residents.
Agriculture also requires huge amounts of water. Wells continuously pump groundwater.
We're killing the planet, destroying everything.
Spain's tourism and agricultural sectors are growing, but some regions have not seen rain in 6 months. The longest drought in decades. Some lagoons have already dried up.
This has become a desert. We can deny it, we can look away, but it's obvious.
Barcelona, With 27 million annual visitors, no other city in Spain attracts more tourists. On our tour of the city, we noticed that the fountains, so typical of Barcelona, are dry, one sign of the dramatic water shortage. The regional government shut them off in March. With temperatures well above 30 degrees Celsius, people really miss the cooling fountains.
There's nothing sadder than a fountain without water. Okay. So you don't like it like that? No.
More water running.
Water.
A sad sight, but a necessary measure. And tourists should help save water too.
It's your
At the
fault,
Urban
you
Hotel,
dummies.
Norma Galofré Alevedra is campaigning for shorter showers.
Well, here we explain about the challenge. 4-minute shower, and this is a simple sun wash. Why 4 minutes? Because the World Health Organization says that the media of a shower is 10 minutes and we waste 200 liters. And then this game of this challenge of 4 minutes, it's only to waste 80 liters per shower. This is the action. And some of them said, I'm able to make out my shower in 2 minutes. So it's great, no?
This year, when it comes to saving water, every effort counts. We meet Harry Schön from Frankfurt, drinking his morning coffee on the hotel's roof deck. He sees the 4-minute shower as a good challenge.
I get myself wet under the shower and then turn off the water. Soak myself once or twice, but use less than 4 minutes.
Why do we have to? Like, it's so freaking dumb. So freaking dumb. I can't with people. I need to change the normal map as well. Doesn't make sense. Oh. That's great. I can't even put music. That's not great. Oh. I'm doing myself another coffee go. Give me a couple of minutes. Yeah, I could. Oh, he has finished working.
Hace muchos años, hacer inversiones era algo casi exclusivamente para personas ricas. Esto era así porque para invertir tu dinero en bolsa tenías que hacerlo a través de un corredor de bolsa, también llamado broker, que es una empresa autorizada para comprar y vender acciones en la bolsa. Un broker funciona de la siguiente forma. Supongamos que quieres comprar una acción de Apple. Tú no puedes ir a la bolsa y comprar directamente esa acción ya que no estarías autorizado para hacerlo. Por eso, lo que debes hacer es darle tu dinero a un broker y pedirle que use tu dinero para comprar esa acción de Apple por ti. A cambio de ese servicio, el broker te cobrará una comisión por cada transacción que hagas, como por ejemplo cuando compres o vendas una acción. Pero las comisiones que cobraban esos brokers antes eran muy altas e incluso establecían un mínimo de dinero para cada operación. Por ejemplo, un broker te cobraba el 2% de la transacción, pero el mínimo a pagar de comisión era $50. Si comprabas $10.000 en acciones, pagabas una comisión del 2%, lo que serían $200. Pero si solo querías comprar $100 en acciones, como el 2% serían $2, el broker terminaba cobrándote el mínimo de $50, que representaría el 50% de tu dinero. Por eso, si tú querías invertir poco dinero, terminarías perdiendo una parte importante en comisiones, y eso hacía que solo las personas que tenían mucho dinero invirtieran en la bolsa. Las tarifas que cobraban los brokers eran muy altas porque todo se hacía manualmente. La venta de las acciones se hacía mediante una persona hablando por teléfono con un empleado del broker que tomaba la orden, y luego la enviaba a otro empleado para que la procesara. Todo ese proceso se hacía manualmente y requería de muchas personas, tal como se ve en la película El Lobo de Wall Street, donde vemos una oficina llena de personas llamando a inversores para venderles acciones. Pero luego llegó la tecnología e hizo que casi todas las operaciones se pudiesen hacer de forma automática. Es decir, hoy simplemente le logueas a una plataforma online, compras la acción que quieras y el sistema procesa todo sin la intervención de una persona. Eso hizo que estas empresas de compra-venta de acciones bajasen mucho los costes y que las comisiones hoy sean muy bajas, incluso menores al 1%, y en la mayoría de los casos sin un mínimo. Entonces, ahora que es muy fácil y barato comprar y vender acciones, muchos inversores minoristas, personas que no son profesionales de la inversión, comienzan a invertir en la bolsa con la ilusión de hacerse ricos invirtiendo sus ahorros sin tener que pagar comisiones altas. Pero hace un tiempo empezaron a llegar brokers que directamente dejaron de cobrar comisiones, lo que significa que puedes invertir sin pagar ningún gasto y que además hicieron de las inversiones algo más parecido a un divertido videojuego que a un trabajo serio. Un ejemplo de esto es Robinhood, un broker que se maneja desde su app diseñado para personas que no saben nada de inversiones, que te dice que invertir no tiene por qué ser tan difícil, y donde puedes hacer inversiones empezando solo con $1. Pero si no te cobran comisiones, ¿cómo hacen estas empresas para ganar dinero? En el vídeo de hoy te mostraremos el negocio detrás de estos brokers que no cobran comisiones y cómo usan a las personas inexpertas como tú para hacer de su negocio uno multimillonario. Más allá de que las diferencias entre el modelo anterior, donde se cobraban costes muy altos por comprar y vender acciones, y el actual, donde en muchos casos es gratuito, en ambos casos la clave está detrás del negocio de un broker, que es generar muchas transacciones, es decir, tener muchos clientes comprando y vendiendo sus acciones a través de su plataforma. En ese sentido, no cobrar comisiones por las transacciones es una muy buena estrategia para captar clientes, ya que hace que muchas personas quieran usar sus servicios, sobre todo personas que tal vez no tengan mucho dinero para invertir, como vimos al principio. Pero que no cobren comisiones no significa que sean organizaciones benéficas. De hecho, las principales plataformas de brokers que no cobran comisión son compañías multimillonarias. Que significa que han encontrado otras formas de extraer dinero de sus clientes. ¿Cuál es esa forma? Veamos cómo funciona el negocio de Robinhood como un ejemplo. Digamos que quieres comprar una acción de Apple. Si compras la acción a través de un broker tradicional, básicamente lo que haces es ordenarle al broker que compre esa acción por ti. El broker la compra instantáneamente en la bolsa y te entrega la acción. Pero en el caso de Robinhood y otros brokers que no cobran comisiones, cuando le pides que te compre una acción, el broker no la compra instantáneamente en la bolsa, sino que le envía una orden a una empresa de negociación de alta frecuencia, que son grandes compañías que se dedican a invertir dinero, pero en vez de hacerlo usando personas que analicen las inversiones, lo hacen usando computadoras. Estas empresas usan computadoras superavanzadas para buscar noticias sobre las empresas y analizar su precio en la bolsa, lo que les permite hacer compras y ventas de acciones miles de veces más rápido que una persona. Entonces, mientras que una persona necesita tiempo para analizar una noticia y luego hacer la compra de una acción, a la computadora le toma milésimas de segundo. Pero, ¿en qué beneficia a Robinhood enviarle la orden a una empresa de negociación de alta frecuencia? Los precios de las acciones varían dependiendo si las personas compran o venden esas acciones. Si muchas personas compran una acción al mismo tiempo, el precio sube. Y si muchas personas venden esa acción al mismo tiempo, el precio baja. Si supieras que miles de personas están por comprar una acción, podrías comprarla primero y así ganar dinero cuando la acción suba. Eso mismo hacen las compañías de negociación de alta frecuencia con Robinhood. Veamos un ejemplo. Digamos que quieres comprar una acción de Disney y le ordenas a Robinhood que la compre por ti. Robinhood guardará esa orden y la juntará con otras miles de órdenes de otros clientes que también quieran comprar acciones de Disney. Luego tomará todas esas órdenes y se las dará a una compañía de negociaciones de alta frecuencia que ahora que sabe que la acción de Disney va a subir, primero compra acciones para sí misma y luego, cuando la acción sube, ejecuta las órdenes de los clientes de Robinhood, ganando dinero con el aumento del precio. Por supuesto que todo eso ocurre en segundos y con fracciones de centavos, es decir, en cada transacción la diferencia es de menos de un centavo, pero si se hacen millones de transacciones con fracciones de centavos, se puede ganar mucho dinero. Y como Robinhood le hace ganar dinero a estas empresas, las compañías de negociación de alta frecuencia le dan mucho dinero a Robinhood a cambio de que compre acciones a través de ellos. Y esa es la razón por la que no te cobran comisiones. Por eso no cobrarte comisiones es parte de la estrategia para poder tener más clientes y generar más transacciones de compra y venta de acciones. Cuantas más transacciones hacen los clientes sobre una acción, más grande es la cantidad de órdenes que Robinhood le puede vender a las compañías de negociación de alta frecuencia. Y si la cantidad de órdenes es mayor, el precio se moverá aún más, porque habrá más órdenes de compra o venta al mismo tiempo. Eso generará más dinero para las empresas de negociación de alta frecuencia, porque cuanto más se mueva el precio, más dinero ganan, y le pagarán más dinero a Robinhood. Por esa razón, empresas como Robinhood tratan de convertir las inversiones en algo simple y más parecido a un juego, ya que eso le hace pensar a la gente que ganar dinero es fácil, haciendo que más y más personas inviertan a través de Robinhood. Ahora bien, ¿en qué podría perjudicarte el hecho de que Robinhood compre las acciones que le pediste a través de una empresa de negociación de alta frecuencia? El principal problema es que como la transacción toma algunos segundos en realizarse, lo más probable es que no termines comprando la acción al precio al que estaba cuando ordenaste a Robinhood comprarla. La diferencia será solo centavos, pero si eres uno de esos inversores que compran y venden acciones todo el tiempo varias veces al día, es probable que esos centavos representen mucho dinero tras varias transacciones. Por ejemplo, si tú compras y vendes acciones muchas veces por día y en cada transacción ganas 2 o 3 centavos, perder medio centavo sería entre un 15% y un 25% menos de ganancia. Por otro lado, si simplemente quieres comprar acciones para tenerlas por un tiempo o para venderlas en algunos días, esos centavos no resultarán significativos y no te perjudicará en nada. Este modelo de negocios, por más que sea conveniente para algunos pequeños inversores ya que no tienen que pagar comisiones, generó mucha polémica. Y es porque Robinhood básicamente está vendiendo la información sobre las órdenes de compra o venta de acciones de sus clientes a unas pocas empresas inversoras que usan esa información para ganar dinero sabiendo de antemano cómo podría moverse el precio de una acción. Y algunos piensan que eso podría ser un caso de inversión ventajista, una práctica que es ilegal. Se considera inversión ventajista cuando una persona compra o vende una acción teniendo un dato que otras personas en el mercado no tienen. Veamos esto con un ejemplo. Supongamos que eres amigo de un empleado de Disney y ese empleado te cuenta en secreto que la empresa va a anunciar que tuvo grandes ganancias en el último año. Al saber eso, podrías ir y comprar una acción de Disney hoy mismo, ya que lo más probable es que mañana, cuando se anuncien las ganancias de la empresa, muchas personas compren y el precio suba. Pero comprar una acción de Disney para beneficiarte de esa información sería ilegal, ya que tienes información que el resto de las personas no tienen, y por eso tienes una ventaja. De hecho, en 2020, Robinhood se enfrentó a una investigación de la SEC, que es el organismo del gobierno de Estados Unidos que regula y controla la bolsa, relacionada con los acuerdos que tenía esta empresa de negociación de alta frecuencia. Unos meses después terminó la investigación y no se pudo probar que hubiera inversiones ventajistas, ya que Robinhood no vendía información sobre una empresa en particular para sacar ventaja como vimos antes en el ejemplo, sino que solo vendía la información sobre las órdenes de sus clientes. Sin embargo, la empresa pagó una multa de 65 millones de dólares a la SEC por engañar a sus clientes al no decirles que estaba comprando sus acciones a través de compañías de negociación de alta frecuencia en vez de hacerlo directo en la bolsa. Pero más allá del debate sobre si vender las órdenes a empresas de negociación de alta frecuencia es bueno porque permite no cobrar comisiones a los clientes, o si en realidad es una forma de ganar mucho más dinero beneficiando a grandes empresas, la verdad es que cuantas más transacciones realice la gente, más dinero ganarán estos brokers y por eso son gratuitos. Por eso, la mejor forma de lograr que la gente use esas plataformas es diciéndoles que van a generar mucho dinero, por lo que estas empresas no se limitan solo a ofrecer compra y venta de acciones, sino que también ofrecen otro tipo de inversiones con las cuales se puede ganar mucho más dinero. Y un ejemplo son las opciones. Una opción es una inversión que funciona como una apuesta. Cuando compras una opción, básicamente estás comprando el derecho a comprar una acción a un precio fijo en el futuro. Por ejemplo, podrías invertir en una opción para comprar una acción de Apple a $200 dentro de 3 meses. Entonces, si en 3 meses el precio de la acción está por encima de los $200, digamos $300, ganarás dinero porque podrás comprar a $200 algo que vale 300. Y si el precio de la acción es de $100, perderás dinero por comprar a $200 algo que vale 100. Incluso si el precio cae mucho, podrías perder todo tu dinero. Pero, ¿cuánto más dinero se puede ganar? La ganancia promedio anual que obtendrías si inviertes en el S&P 500, que es un índice que promedia el precio de las acciones de las 500 empresas más grandes de Wall Street, es del 11,88%, lo que significa que si quisieras duplicar tu dinero, tendrías que esperar unos 7 u 8 años. Pero para mucha gente, especialmente inversores no profesionales que sueñan con hacerse ricos muy rápido, eso no es lo suficientemente bueno, y por eso recurren a inversiones mucho más arriesgadas como las opciones, que tienen la posibilidad de duplicar tu dinero en solo un día, los 8 años que tomaría invirtiendo en el S&P 500. Pero así como se puede ganar mucho dinero, también se puede perderlo todo, y eso es lo que está pasando en la mayoría de los casos. Nitin Kamath, CEO y fundador de Zerodha, un importante broker online, dijo que el 80% de las opciones al final de cada día tienen pérdidas y que la compra de opciones arruina a la mayoría de los inversores minoristas. Pero si la gente supiera lo arriesgadas que son las opciones, probablemente muchas de las personas elegirían no invertir en ello. En cambio, los brokers han comenzado a promocionar sus opciones diciéndole a la gente que puede hacerse rica y haciendo que la operatoria para invertir en opciones sea algo tan simple como tocar un botón en tu teléfono celular. Todo está armado para que inviertas tu dinero pensando que es algo fácil y para que las personas se sientan cómodas jugando en los mercados como lo harían con un videojuego. Si miramos la sección de opciones de la página de Robinhood, veremos cómo promueven un creador de estrategias para planificar, construir y ejecutar tus estrategias con opciones, haciendo parecer fácil una inversión que en realidad no lo es, y sin nombrar ninguno de los riesgos que esta inversión tiene. Para conocer los riesgos tienes que hacer clic en un pequeño botón que dice Divulgaciones del creador de estrategias, donde te aparece una ventana sin ningún tipo de diseño que aclare que las opciones conllevan un nivel significativo de riesgo y no son adecuadas para todos los inversores. De hecho, Robinhood dice que todo el mundo debería tener acceso a los mercados financieros y que por eso crearon la plataforma para que la inversión sea fácil, accesible y comprensible para principiantes. Por supuesto que cada persona es libre de invertir o gastar su dinero como quiera, pero estas empresas deben mostrar claramente cuáles son los riesgos de una inversión. De otra forma, están haciendo pensar a las personas que ganar dinero invirtiendo es algo fácil con tal de sumar más clientes para hacerse ricos con las empresas de negociación de alta frecuencia, cuando en realidad es algo que requiere de entrenamiento, estudio y profesionalidad. Estos intentos de los brokers por hacer creer a las personas que invertir es como un juego está haciendo que miles de pequeños inversores arriesguen su dinero, incluso los que no deberían hacerlo. Muchos de los clientes que invierten en estas plataformas lo hacen con pequeñas sumas de dinero porque son personas que prácticamente viven al día y sueñan con hacerse ricos. Por un lado, es verdad que si alguien quiere invertir solo $100 en bolsa cada mes, un broker libre de comisiones es la mejor manera de hacerlo, porque no gastará casi nada en comisiones del broker. Sin embargo, es probable que alguien que solo puede invertir $100 al mes probablemente no debería invertir en el mercado de valores. Tal vez sería mejor para esas personas guardar ese dinero como un fondo de emergencia invirtiéndolo en su banco, aprendiendo una nueva habilidad que podría generarles ingresos adicionales o simplemente pagando una deuda. El puntaje FICO es una herramienta que tienen los bancos para medir cómo de buena o mala es la situación financiera de una persona antes de darles un préstamo. Y un estudio de 2022 mostró que el 43% de los usuarios de Robinhood tienen puntajes FICO inferiores a 650. Cuando el puntaje es mayor de sana, pero cuando el puntaje es menor, significa que la persona tiene una mala situación financiera y que los bancos ya no le darán préstamos porque saben que no los van a poder devolver. El hecho de que casi la mitad de los usuarios de Robinhood tengan un puntaje inferior a 650 muestra que muchas de las personas que invierten allí tienen muchas deudas que no están pudiendo pagar y que están en una mala situación financiera. Es gente que está ilusionada con volverse rica y salir adelante tomando inversiones arriesgadas sin el conocimiento necesario. Pero teniendo en cuenta que la mayoría pierde dinero, como vimos antes, para esas personas sería mucho mejor usar esos $100 para pagar sus deudas o para ahorrar sin arriesgar su dinero por si sucede algo malo y lo necesitan. Si vemos los puntajes pico de los clientes de otros brokers online que no muestran las inversiones como un juego, como el caso de Schwab o E-Trade, el porcentaje de clientes con menos de 650 puntos es de solo el 33%. Esto es porque las plataformas de estos brokers son menos amigables y se debe ser un profesional para saber usarlas. Además, muchas veces tienen cantidades mínimas para operar, como el caso de Schwab, donde tienes que depositar una cantidad mínima de entre 5.000 y $1.000.000, dependiendo del tipo de inversiones que quieras hacer. Además, el problema con este tipo de inversores no entrenados es que muchas veces pretenden ganar dinero rápido, a la vez que se asustan igual de rápido si empiezan a perder. Eso los lleva a que sus ganancias no sean tan buenas como podrían ser, ya que pierdan más de lo que deberían. Veamos esto con un ejemplo. Supongamos que una persona que no es experta en inversiones y que además necesita dinero, compra acciones de Apple en el punto marcado como primer punto de entrada. Aquí podrían pasar tres situaciones. La primera es que la persona a los 2 días venda teniendo una ganancia muy pequeña y perdiéndose todo el aumento en el precio que vendrá después. La segunda opción que podría darse es que se quede con la acción por más tiempo y que cuando empiece a caer venda por miedo a perder más dinero, perdiéndose también toda la subida. Y la última situación que podría pasar es que la persona venda rápido y como ve que sigue subiendo, vuelva a comprar en el momento marcado como segundo punto de entrada en el gráfico para luego vender rápido nuevamente al ver que está perdiendo dinero con la caída del precio. Una persona no profesional difícilmente va a mantener en el largo plazo sus acciones y lo más probable es que, al no tener que pagar comisiones, compre y venda todo el tiempo generando ganancias muy chicas o incluso perdiendo lentamente todo su dinero. Un estudio realizado en 2019 por Dalbar, una empresa que investiga cómo se comportan los inversores, mostró que los inversores individuales promediaron una ganancia anual del 3,69%, mientras que el S&P 500 promedió una ganancia anual del 11,1%, lo que significa que si las personas simplemente hubiesen invertido en el índice S&P 500 sin comprar y vender acciones por su cuenta todo el tiempo, hubiesen tenido una ganancia casi 4 veces mayor. Por otro lado, un estudio hecho por Larry Swedron, jefe de estudios económicos y financieros de Buckingham Strategic Wealth, una empresa que se dedica a proveer asesoramiento financiero, mostró que la mayoría de las personas que compran y venden acciones diariamente en Robinhood pierde dinero, y que mientras que solo el 20% obtiene ganancias en un año típico, solo el 1% de ellos son capaces de generar cada vez más ganancias. Eso significa que el 99% estaría mejor si abandonara la compra y venta diaria de acciones. Estas empresas han llegado para hacerte creer que invertir es un juego y que puedes hacerte rico de forma rápida, fácil y sin esfuerzo. Pero la realidad es que mientras muchas personas pierden su dinero todos los días, empresas como Robinhood hacen millones de dólares usando el dinero de sus clientes para ganar dinero beneficiando a empresas de negociación de alta frecuencia. Esperamos que te haya gustado el vídeo. Si es así, nos ayudaría muchísimo que nos dejases un comentario, ya que la red neuronal de YouTube esto lo valora muchísimo y así recomienda nuestros vídeos a más gente. Le dieses a like y actives la campanita para que te llegue una notificación cuando subamos nuestro próximo vídeo. Así que nos vemos en él. Un saludo.
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
I'm not a
except
crook.
in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
August 15th, 1971 will stand as an important event in economic history for many, many generations. In fact, hundreds of years from now, people will look back to that day
and be like, what a bunch of cunts were we?
The sun rises today as it has a million times before. Commuters wake up and travel to their offices to begin the day's work. Farmers tend to their crops. Construction workers build new infrastructure. Today is a day like any other. Or is it? In 2008, the world experienced one of the greatest financial turmoils in history. Markets around the world started crashing, and major financial institutions, once thought to be invincible, started showing signs of collapse. Governments responded.
How dare you?
Issuing massive bailouts.
America collapsing under
to keep the world economy
its delusions.
And it worked.
How dare you?
The global economy recovered much quicker than most predicted, and soon it was back to business as usual. And yet, something still isn't quite right. A growing sense of unease fills the population. In the world of finance, indeed, in all facets of modern life, cracks have started to appear.
There's angst out there, and I think if you talk to people on the street today, they would tell you, I don't know what's causing all this, but this just doesn't feel normal to me. The government's running $1 trillion worth of deficit. Why isn't the economy improving? The government's going to spend almost $3.7 trillion.
Inefficiencies.
Why don't I have a job? Why is the unemployment rate at 9%? And I even think that number's understated.
A lot of people are feeling unsure about the world today, concerned that something terrible is waiting in the wings. We're told that the global financial crisis of a few years ago has been fixed. But what if the crisis isn't the cause of the angst so many of us feel, but rather the symptom of a much deeper problem?
At Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, delegates from 44 allied and associate countries arrived for the opening of the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference.
Our story begins in 1944. With World War II coming to an end, the Allied nations met at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to create a new financial system which would stabilize the world once the war ended. With America poised to enter a golden age of prosperity, the U.S. dollar was chosen as the world's reserve currency.
The Bretton Woods system was created after the Second World War at the Bretton Woods Conference in New Hampshire. And rather than using gold as the means of exchange between countries, as was the case in the deal gold standard, the dollar was going to be used. The dollar was chosen because back then it was as good as gold.
Under this new system,
and we know fiat currency doesn't change at all over time.
And the US dollar would be tied to gold at a price of $35 per ounce. This meant that countries around the world could trade their currencies for US dollars, which they could then exchange for gold. This created a system where all currencies were essentially backed by gold. To avoid the logistics of shipping physical gold across the world, when countries did exchange their currencies for gold, it was usually stored safely in the U.S.
Safely.
Under the Bretton Woods system, you could exchange your currency or your dollars for gold. Now, it only applied to foreign countries and central banks. And we began to run budget deficits. We were running the Great Society program under Lyndon Johnson. We were fighting a war in Vietnam. And all of a sudden, we were running these deficits, and countries were changing their dollars. And they said they wanted gold. And it began with the French, and then it started to spread.
Ah, the bloody French.
Programs in the United States,
Other countries became concerned that the U.S. was spending more money than it had gold reserves. They started exchanging their
What?
dollars
A
for
country
gold
that
and
is
demanding
living on
physical delivery,
credit?
as they felt
Would
there
they
were
do
more
that?
dollars being printed than the gold that backed it.
The
To
American
prevent this
dream?
outflow of gold from American vaults, President Nixon called for an emergency suspension of the gold convertibility system.
I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators.
I'm just being
I have directed Secretary Connolly
sarcastic
to
because
suspend
it's
temporarily
funny.
the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
All of the problems that we see today in the monetary system are a direct result of the decision made in August 15th, 1971, to abandon a fixed link back to gold. What gold did is it provided discipline on governments, provided discipline on government spending. Under the old system, if you ran a budget deficit, then what would happen is gold would flow out of your country until there was a balance again.
My coffee.
Well,
I forgot about my coffee.
Countries ran perpetual deficits. So if you look at, for example, this country, from 1971 on, the U.S. has never run a surplus. Ever since we went off the gold standard, it's just been perpetual stimulus. Good times, bad times, always run a deficit.
What led Nixon to abandon the gold standard in 1971, although he claimed it was temporary, we've been waiting 4 years, was so off of it. We ran up huge deficits during the 1960s. We had the guns and butter economy where the government was both simultaneously fighting a war in Vietnam abroad. In addition, we were funding manned missions to the moon and the whole space program. We were creating more money than we had gold reserves to back it up. And a lot of our foreign creditors saw this and began to demand gold rather than their Federal Reserve notes because they sensed that Washington simply didn't have enough gold to make its commitment to back the dollar.
By removing the link between gold and the U.S. dollar, President Nixon created a system where all currencies were backed by nothing. This is what is known as a fiat currency.
Fiat currency is currency that's backed by nothing except government promises. The word fiat is a Latin word, and it basically means currency that's circulating by force. If people have confidence in that currency, and if there's enough government force, that will enable the currency to circulate for a period of time until people lose confidence in the currency.
There is no nation on this planet that currently uses money. We all use currency. There will come a day when everybody knows the difference.
Money is a medium of exchange, and the way it has evolved is that it's always something of intrinsic value until the modern age, when the politicians say, well, we don't need anything of intrinsic value anymore. All we need is political decree. We can say, this is money, this piece of paper is money. Now money has a new characteristic. But underneath it all, there's this same concept in place that nobody ever seems to challenge, and that is that governments have a right to declare something of no value to be money, and you must accept it. That's really the problem, and it's still the problem today. It's destroying the economies of the world.
With currencies no longer backed by anything real or tangible, their value was measured only in relation to each other. And because countries with relatively weak currencies can make products cheaply, countries devalued their own currencies to make them desirable trading partners.
Every paper currency measures itself against the dollar. So if the dollar goes down, the other central banks respond to that, and they try and intervene in the foreign exchange markets to ensure that the impact doesn't hit their domestic economies.
What is a Ponzi scheme? A Ponzi
America.
scheme is a fraudulent investment scheme that promises high returns for investors with little or no risk. Sounds too good to be true, right? That's because
it is. Oh my God.
Well, typically through low-risk ventures like
We
stock
keep
or
on
real
being
estate portfolios.
fooled by the same tricks, and then we wonder why we're being tricked. Because
A Ponzi scheme, on the other
you
hand,
don't learn.
promises massive returns quickly. How does it accomplish this? Instead of using the money invested
it fools
to build
you
wealth,
again and again, and you're like, I want more, give me more of that same trick. I still don't
New investors have also
understand.
been promised large returns.
The scheme must then find an even bigger group of investors to pay them off.
And that's what America has been doing for all these years. Hey, France, wanna pay for my shit? Go for it. Hey, everyone else. And then they blame China for doing the same with his debt trap. It's exactly the same crap.
Or large numbers of previous investors all cash out at the same time, and the scheme collapses in on itself. By this time, the perpetrators of the scheme have siphoned off tremendous amounts of money for themselves, while the investors are left out of pocket and out of luck. Without a fixed link to gold, the U.S. Treasury has been able to borrow and spend as much money as it wants. When the U.S. government needs money,
it's funny.
With the Federal Reserve.
Projection.
The Federal Reserve prints the currency required for the loan, and in return receives an IOU from the U.S. Treasury.
I owe you.
These IOUs are called
We definitely owe you.
With the money provided
America.
from these loans or bonds, the U.S. government
And
pays
you
its
owe
bills and
us.
obligations. Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury
That's
and the
the
Federal Reserve work
narcissistic
to sell these bonds at auction.
trick that you've pulled on everyone, and then you're like, hey, look over there, China is doing that. It's Trump. Like, Trump is embodying America's values so well.
If the loans are spent on bills
And everyone is like, let's do like them. It works. Yeah, it works because you're prodding everyone. Australia, but it came from, you know, it was like a consortium with Thatcher. Same shit.
There's no question about it. They go through the appearance of lending money to the governments, and the governments agreed to pay back the money plus interest. And so this money comes into being, and created just for that purpose. They give it to the government.
And yeah, it's the Anglosphere, it's the Protestant, the WASP, shaming you for being greedy and lusty and blah blah blah. But like, girl, this is what you make everyone want to be and become, so you can make money out of it, and you actually by
what they do is they borrow more to cover the original loan plus the interest, and then by that time Congress
influencing the world to be like that, you actually influence them to be like you. So everyone is as much as a sinner as you are, but the thing is, because you represent authority, the moral superiority through your religion, because you think you're so much better, you can point the finger at everyone else and be like, hey, it's bad to do what you do, even if you just copy me, but like, let's not talk about that. It's so funny.
Meaning, we've been buying a lot more products from the rest of the world than they have been buying from us. The Japanese and Koreans sell us cars and electronics. The Middle East sells us oil. And the Chinese sell us seemingly everything on our Walmart shelves. The U.S. pays for these products with U.S. dollars, and everyone is happy.
Everyone is happy, really?
US dollar profits back into their own
Delusion. Convince yourself.
would rise in value, making their economies less desirable to trade with. Instead, countries invest their dollar profits by buying U.S. government bonds. So countries around the world sell their goods to the U.S. in exchange for U.S. dollars, which have been borrowed through the Federal Reserve, creating IOUs. And countries then loan their U.S. dollar profits back to the U.S. by buying more IOUs. The money from
Ponzi scheme 101.
government expenses, as well as paying back previous IOUs. But in order to do this, larger and larger loans must be made in order to pay back the principal and the interest. By paying back old loans with new and larger loans, it would appear as if the entire world has been investing their hard-earned money into a Ponzi scheme of epic proportions.
Epic.
In this business of creating money for federal governments and national governments around the world, If they didn't keep creating new money in larger and larger amounts, the whole thing would crash because that's where the money comes
That's
from.
what it does
Pay off the
every
previous
10
loans
years.
with new loans.
Wake up.
So that's why it's a Ponzi scheme. It's a classic Ponzi.
Asylum.
In order for the U.S. economy,
Like I need to, that's great that I'm recording because at least I will be able to take all that commentating and like write those quests based on that. Like I need to do that more often.
Every Friday night, Julia's job is to compare the grocery prices of our neighborhood stores for Saturday morning shopping. There are 5 big neighborhood markets within a couple of blocks of our house. Julia spreads her shopping around, going where the prices are lowest and the quality best.
Remember when a chocolate bar cost $0.25? When you could fill your car up for $5?
It's inflation, bitch. What part of that do you not understand?
Whatever happened to those days? Without anything tangible backing currencies,
Your mama.
governments could borrow
That's what
and
happened.
print as much currency as it wanted. This has gradually led to the value of our currency being eroded.
With the creation of all this money, that dilutes the value of all of the dollars that were out there before, so that the purchasing power of the dollar gets crowded down. We used to be able to buy a gallon of gas for 31 cents. Now it's getting around $5.
The average guy in the street is affected by inflation because of the loss of purchasing power. And as a consequence, his standard of living is declining if he can't keep up with the inflation rate.
in many measures of a standard of living, Americans today are actually worse off. You can take my grandparents. My grandmother never worked, despite the fact that my grandfather was a carpenter.
Well, we don't care about your grandma. She was creating more value at home than being forced to work to do shit for a capitalist. That's what you don't understand.
Faster than incomes, people were forced into more and more drastic measures to maintain their standard of living.
With each new day, the work of a family begins again.
When we went off,
You took women's homeworks
prior to that is the husband went to
as you freed them into
because of inflation in the 70s, the wife went to work.
capitalistic labor, and you're taking away that value that is actually, and I don't care, like it's not women, it's like we would be able to do so much more and have so much better lifestyle if we could work from home for our own wealth and community, but we don't, because we need to make money for capitalists that need to always make more money, so we need to squeeze more money out of people. That's the fucking point.
The average person is now forced to borrow well beyond.
But if you had one parent at home
At first, this was to maintain
managing,
standard of living.
and it could be like half and half, that's the thing, like it could be two part-time, and by adding value, doing the chores, the dad bringing the kids to the school, doing the sports activities, baking, like it would cross-train so many people doing so many things, and everyone would be so much happier than being stuck in a fucking stupid job that we need to create out of thin air, doing dumb shit just so people can have money to pay more bills, to pay more taxes, when all that is then the taxes that we pay off to full-time jobs. It's then sent to the community centers that can't do shit properly either because they're not trained, they don't understand, they're not good, blah blah blah. Like, let that value being created by the people for the people within their communities, and everyone would be so much better off. It's dumb, it's fucking dumb. Capitalist societies are just so dumb. They think they are making you sick to squeeze more money out of it than to, it's just for the sake of capital, when we actually give away the the most important value, that is time.
And the headline inflation is once you include
Dum dum, it's capitalists. Dum dums. It's just a fraud. Dum dum. And everyone is
lower than what it really is. If the U.S. government were using the
brainwashed to believe all that.
President Carter was in the White House in the late 1970s, the inflation rate today in the United States would be 9 or 10%. That's how badly the currency is being debased. Now, the reason why they do that is there are a lot of inflation-adjusted responsibilities.
Well, I guess I could.
Money to, for example, people on the Social Security system on an inflation-adjusted basis. If they keep the inflation rate low, according to their own statistic, that means they're paying out less. That means the government budget deficit is less.
A thriving metropolis, Toledo is one of the world's greatest glass processing centers.
Oh my God. America. Convince yourself.
Primarily with rubber. Akron is the rubber manufacturing capital of the nation and the world. Her very name is synonymous with rubber.
In a global economy where currencies are measured,
Capital is there to make money out of.
their own currency, making
Wow.
industries more competitive. A country with a weak currency can make products cheaper, causing entire industrial centers to move overseas. This effect
I'll fix that. No issue another time.
Some of which still haven't recovered from the loss of their industrial base.
I think the guy on the street is kind of
That's the
frustrated.
point.
They go, gosh, I went to college, I don't have a job, I can't get a job, I spent all this money on
Work
student
for
loans, it's
yourself.
costing me more to live. The Fed is
You'll
telling me there's no inflation, yet I go to the store and I see the price of milk going up,
be
meat. I pull into a gas
wealthier
station,
like that.
for gas. They don't really understand how
That's
all this
what we
affects
need
them
to
on a personal level.
create, and that's what I'm working
I
on.
think they're frustrated because there isn't an educational system that explains that, look, when you print money, when you have nothing backing it, and when you debase it, you have all the side effects that you see. Higher inflation costs, corruption, cronyism,
What?
all the things that have been in headlines
Corruption?
that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years.
The protest movements are an interesting phenomenon. A lot of people are terribly upset with Wall Street. They're upset what's happening to their purchasing power. They're upset
Because Wall Street are, they're just there to make money for themselves and look good doing it while they actually undermine everything. It's just a bunch of wankers that are happy to wear ties because it makes them feel like they're men.
And yet, at the same time, they're demanding more welfare, demanding more medical benefits, they're demanding more state control and regulation of their lives, they're demanding more money being created and pumped into the society. They don't realize that those are the very things that have brought them onto the street in the first place, in their anger.
While the person on the street is struggling to get by, we're told that what we're experiencing is a typical recession. Why then does this current crisis feel different?
This is Sylly's morning run, definitely.
This is far from
And it's not new, I've been saying that for years.
I think what we're experiencing now are the pains of
It's just that people need to stop running into that fucking dumb rat race that is making the wheel spin faster. And then they're like, I need to run faster, I don't understand why. Look in the mirror and blame yourself.
Are we now at the point where we're maxed out and cannot take on any more new debt?
What we're seeing today is deleveraging at all levels of society. I mean, consumers are maxed out. Each succession that we had in the economy, when we went through this boom and bust period, we go through a bust,
Boom and bust, boom and
the economy would
bust.
start up again, but we kept piling on levels of debt.
Boom and
Finally,
bust.
we reached the point where you
Bust a
can't pile
Benny.
any more debt.
Oh.
Banks are no longer willing to give out credit so freely.
Bust a
and
pussy.
many people are more concerned with paying off existing debt as opposed to taking on new debt. While this is prudent, sensible behavior, it's also a serious threat to the global economy. Having set itself up as a giant Ponzi scheme, the global economy is reliant on more and larger debt being issued to keep itself up.
If you try to just live within your means and
If you try.
get by with just the
Good luck.
dollars that we have today, paying the interest on them collapses the currency supply. And so we continually have to borrow more units of currency into existence every month than we extinguish by paying off debt.
The system, as it's been presently structured, is that they have to continue expanding the money supply, otherwise the system is going to die.
Politicians and pundits
The
talk
system's
about
gonna die. Well, maybe it should. Maybe it should. If it dies, then it means we can do better with it, no?
We could just have an overnight shutdown, which they can't ever imagine happening while they're in power. So there's always this wish to...
We can revive it in a better way. No?
Which is really what we're doing.
But the problem is we run out of road. You know, there is no place to kick the can anymore. We've got to deal with it.
Stop kicking the can.
Because every time we kicked it down the road, unfortunately, it got bigger. So now it's an enormous can.
Oh, really? Surprising, isn't it?
While the financial crisis of 2008 may have been the first death throes of the Ponzi scheme, governments around the world weren't about to sit back and let it fail. So they delayed the inevitable collapse,
Exactly.
pushing it down the road by bailing out struggling financial institutions, buying toxic mortgages, and taking on debt on behalf of its citizens.
In 2009, 2010, what happened was the crisis was papered over through bailouts, guarantees, money printing, expansion of the money supply, etc. Governments can do that. I mean, don't underestimate the ability of governments to dictate results in the short run. But in the long run, none of the problems are solved. The bad debts are still there.
None?
Still insolvent. The banks are not lending. The economy's not growing. So we haven't really solved anything.
By
really?
out of these crises, by creating money out of nothing and flooding it into the economy and diluting the purchasing power, they're not really solving the problem. What they're doing is pushing it off a little bit into the future and making it worse.
Now, do we keep going down this road? Do we print more money? I mean, the Fed balance sheet went from 800 billion to 3 trillion. It should now go to 6 trillion. We had a $800 billion stimulus. Should we now have a $2 trillion stimulus? I mean, in theory, you could, but this is
In
where
theory.
you could lose faith entirely in the currency, and the currency could collapse.
The Federal Reserve's money printing exercises may help prop up the economy in the short term, but what are the consequences of money printing on such a large scale?
It fucks it up.
I think you're going to see a very rapid decline in the value of the dollar in a matter of days, whether it's 20%, 30%, 40%. A lot of people have been buying the dollar as a safe haven. You know, when they find out that there's no safety there, in fact,
And
safe haven
because a lot of countries are trying to dollarize countries and individuals, they try to dollarize their portfolio so they can rely on that currency that is actually like it's gonna screw the whole world, and then we're gonna blame China again.
In the US dollar.
I'm not China is not doing the same. It's just that it's a blame game, and like just be smarter and stop believing dumb shit just so you can blame the foreigner. The foreigner is taking a chance on fake belief once again, on collective illusions, but they are the most like the least comfortable in that system. So you're using the foreigner to make your delusion work.
Now, you know, when private factors, when people who are voluntarily participating, foreigners, foreign central banks, when they stop buying, the one difference is the Federal Reserve can come and supply the demand for the people who are waking up to the Ponzi nature of what we're doing. But of course, when the Fed becomes the only buyer, that's the end game, or be the beginning of the hyperinflation.
Hyperinflation is a rapid increase in the inflation
Okay,
rate.
I'm gonna do a
So much
build.
so that, people lose faith in the currency.
I don't
and
know,
you see
I haven't
what an
changed
impact of
much
flight from the currency.
things, but I wanna check how the lights that I've changed on
Spend so much money forcing it to borrow.
the street lights are actually doing, and I actually want to see, I'm gonna go and check the last round in that neighborhood to see how that is looking. I could actually add a few things in there. This is Santa Monica.
When that level comes, everybody panics together.
I'm gonna
Consequence of hyperinflation is the price of goods and services rises very,
add a
very
couple of
rapidly.
things to
And
make
that
it
keeps
look
upon
more
itself, causing people to get rid of
like
the currency even more
LA
quickly.
Street.
So you don't have a
Which
situation
means
where
add
people go out and they buy things just to
some
get
barrels,
the
some
money.
beans.
And paradoxically, that then starts driving and accelerating demand to pay for money because they want more paper money to go and buy things. So you have this situation where
Container, bin bags.
in advance of this issue.
In everyday life, you'll be scrambling from day to day to get.
Add more trash, and there you go. You have a beautiful city.
Because you know that
Sinti, hey Sinti. It's a city where there's scene everywhere, and it's kind of funny because it reminds me of Cindy, because she was like, "You're saying my name wrong. It's not Cindy, it's Cindy." I'm like, you pay so much attention to something that is either barely audible, or it's part of my speech patterns. Like I have a lisp. I'm sorry if I have a lisp. You take it personally for stupid reasons, but I'm like, maybe I just, you're not gonna go to someone that is disabled and being like, stop blimping, like, you have like a leg that is 10 centimeters shorter, but you should not because sorry girl. A palette, I can put a palette.
This is a problem facing the United States alone. But with so many countries holding their savings in U.S. government bonds, a loss of confidence in the U.S. dollar could trigger a global crisis, which
Well,
would affect every nation on Earth.
If the U.S. dollar hyperinflates, the implications are really profound, because you can go to a country like Zimbabwe and see the impact of a hyperinflation. But what happens when the world reserve currency hyperinflates? We've never been in this situation before. It's impossible to predict, what the outcome is going to be. But logic suggests
it is
that
possible.
the US dollar hyperinflates, most if not all of the currencies of the world will also have severe economic problems, because at the end of the day, the reserves of all of these currencies are basically dollars.
Oh, I need to do of course. I moved so many things around. I need to redo
And they all result from the same thing, bad.
Then I've mentioned the Occlusion killing.
And the U.S. right now is pursuing bad policies. Central bank is doing a bad job managing the currency. As a consequence, it's inevitable that the dollar is going to collapse. It's on this road that I call the fiat currency graveyard.
The markets, the private sector, however you like to decide it, people, they suddenly sort of move in a herd instinct, they suddenly sort of understand things. And this can happen overnight. I mean, it really can. So the timing of this is, I think, very difficult, and impossible for us to say, but I would point out that there is the danger that, I use a metaphor, one morning we will wake up and find that we are in a very different world. It may not be one morning, it may be a week, a month.
Maybe you should do that tomorrow morning then.
And we won't really be able to predict when.
Hyperinflation may be one of several scenarios facing the world today. But history has shown us that whenever a nation tried to run its economy using an artificial fiat system, the end result is always the same.
disaster.
Crap.
There is a proven
It's a crap.
100% failure rate. There is no exception to this. Fiat currencies always fail. And then 40 years ago, we tried this grand experiment where all the world's currencies became fiat at the same time when we ended the Bretton Woods system.
The world is going to have to extricate itself from this monetary system based on the dollar, because if you want to back your currency, you have to back it with something. You can't back it with nothing. And you always think of that old Superman movie where the first one where Lois Lane, she falls off the top of the building and Superman catches her. And he says, I got you. Don't worry, I got you. And she says, well, you got me. Who's got you? Well, that's the dollar. Who's got the dollar? It's not Superman. The dollar can't fly on its own. The dollar used to be backed by gold. It was gold that had the dollar. It's like everybody has
It's not like gold is the answer
currency.
neither.
And so we're all going to go down.
If there is a loss of confidence in the U.S. dollar, and I think there will be in this decade, it's happened before, it'll just be history repeating, then we'll probably have to go back to something that will instill confidence.
And it
what
usually
instills
does.
confidence
Nothing
is
new there.
gold.
The only real solution is to go back to a real sound currency, real money with something behind it. It doesn't have to be gold or silver, but historically that has always been what societies have chosen through trial and error. They've tried this, they've tried that. They always wind up with gold or silver. I think that probably is a clue that it's not a bad way to go.
With all the uncertainty facing the world today, a return to a gold-backed economy would seem logical. So how come there isn't so much as a discussion about such a return? The answer is as simple as it is alarming. The people at the top, the ones who have been benefiting from the current Ponzi system, don't want the ride to end. Many now believe
Of course
the
not.
price of gold
They
and
have all the
silver
money in
have
the
been
world and they can't buy
artificially
themselves
suppressed
a
to make it seem
psychologist
less
to get rid of
desirable
that
as a unit
fucking
of global exchange.
fear. And
What governments try to do is to maintain a low gold price, because by doing that, it makes the dollar look worthy of being a world reserve currency, when in fact we know the dollar is not worthy of that esteemed position because it's being so badly mismanaged by the United States.
Groups like the Gold Anti-Trust Action Committee, or GATT, have been tracking what they believe is the deliberate suppression of gold and silver prices through a variety of dubious means.
In 12 years, we've amassed nothing but evidence of the supports the manipulation of gold prices. It'd be like talking about a murder trial when a jury would say guilty on a reasonable doubt, but you got to
it's funny
present each point
to
of
have so
evidence
many
and how it all
smart
fits
people
together.
There are numerous methods that they use to suppress the price
not
of
getting
gold.
it.
Some are harder to prove than others, but some of them are fully reported, and that's central bank sales.
Between 1999 and 2002, the Bank of England foolishly sold a massive amount of Britain's gold reserves at an average price of $275 an ounce. The proceeds were spent buying euros and US dollars. The governments of Canada, France, and Switzerland, among others, were also sellers of their gold around this time.
We know that the central bank used to sell 400 tons every year. Well, why were they selling 400 tons? Obviously, it was the dumbest
Talking about
decision
Canada, where's
anyone
the
could have made in a decade. By far the
Canadian dollar at the moment?
Sell 400. I mean, now, gold goes from 300 to 1,600, almost 70. Why were you selling the gold?
It increased.
Because they were trying to
Good.
keep the price down. So it was a coordinated thing to keep everyone focused on believing in currencies.
Alan Greenspan, in testimony to Congress, admitted that they were manipulating the price of gold when he said, the world's central banks stand ready to lease gold in increasing quantities, meaning they were already doing it. Should the price of gold rise, meaning the target was to suppress the price of gold. So they were already doing it, and the target was to suppress the price of gold. He admitted it in testimony to Congress.
Although central banks are able to sell off their country's gold holdings legally, they may have also been suppressing the price of gold using some other rather questionable means. Some investigators believe that Western central banks have been loaning their country's gold to bullion banks. A bullion bank is an institution that sells gold with the intention of buying it back sometime in the future at a cheaper price. With the proceeds of this sale, These banks
This
have been
table
known
as
to
well
buy
needs to
U.S.
be,
government bonds.
like
While
the
this isn't
geometry
a
seems to
problem
be
itself,
way too complex
central
for what it
banks
is.
report the gold they have and the gold they
So,
loan to these
what
bullion
is it?
banks as
Table
one item.
entrance.
So while a central bank may claim it has a
Okay.
certain amount of gold in
We're gonna
reserves, much of that gold
look
may
at
be
that.
on loan to a bullion bank, which may
So
have sold the
many
gold in
faces
exchange for
for
government
no
bonds.
freaking.
One means of intervention in the gold market is the lending of gold to so-called bullion banks, and they sell it in the market. This is suppresses the price as if the central banks would sell it directly, but this lending does not appear in the book of the central banks.
The U.S. Treasury a few years ago changed the way they account for gold, and they're accounting for some of their receivables and their inventory as one line item. So they're accounting for what they actually have and what people owe them as the same thing. And that is basically illegal accounting. It's fraudulent.
But why work so hard to keep the price of gold and silver low? Why do healthy gold and silver prices threaten to collapse the Ponzi scheme?
There's this competitive relationship between gold and national currencies because gold is the only competitor to a national
84.
currency. You know, gold is money, and these national currencies are money substitutes that circulate in place of gold.
Fiat money gives the power to government. Real money keeps the power with the people. Because when you have real money, government is limited. It can only spend what it taxes. And the public will resist taxation. But if the government can simply print and borrow, there's a lot less resistance. And so it's a lot easier for the government to grow when it can promise something for nothing. And so that's what they do. And so gold is what protects the people from the reckless policies of government. Gold is government chaperone. The government wants to be able to do whatever it wants. Gold stands in its way. So yes, gold is an enemy of big government. But it's a friend of freedom. It's a protector of individuals from government.
Oh, stop selling us some freedom within your bloody stupid economics.
It's a barometer of the well-being of the United States. Look at gold screaming now, and the world's falling apart. So it calls attention to how
Your
bad
mama
things
is
are.
falling
So
apart.
the U.S. government has an interest, Wall Street, the politicians, to keep the price suppressed.
Wall Street doesn't want you going down to a coin dealer buying gold and silver coins. They want to sell you paper. The government wants to sell you paper. So I would say it's the government and Wall Street.
Gold in the hands of people is the way you control government. Governments cannot create money out of thin air. If it's gold, they can only create paper out of thin air. And if they can create paper out of thin air, they can use that paper to wage wars, or they can use that paper as a political contrivance to enrich their friends. And as a consequence, governments have been fighting gold all century long.
Despite this desire to keep gold and silver down, the recent instability in the markets has seen the demand for gold and silver skyrocket. This, in turn, has exposed a deeper problem within the central banks.
The problem the central banks in the West now face is that they have sold an awful lot of gold to try and suppress the price of gold. They are now embarrassed by the fact that central banks, not in that original cartel, are now really very keen buyers of gold. And we're talking about the Chinese, we're talking about the Russians, we're talking about the Indians, we're talking about even Mexico. All these non-mainstream central banks, not part of, if you like, the top club members of the Bank of International Settlements, you know, the little guys in that context, they're picking up hundreds of tons of this stuff.
To suppress the price of gold, Western central banks have had to sell or loan out their country's gold holdings. But because the gold they sell rarely leaves their vaults, no one can be certain they aren't selling or loaning out more gold than they physically own. If this is true, then this could be one of the biggest scams ever perpetrated in history. A massive con perpetrated not by individuals, but by entire governments.
This central bank gold, most of it sits at the New York Federal Reserve and the Bank of England. So it's in the basement of these two places, and it doesn't actually move. When a country is doing international settlement, they basically take a bar off of this pile and put it on that pile. Or they'll just change the labels, or it's just a book entry, it's accounting. Except
There's been some pretty creative accounting on all this gold, and I doubt very much that I don't think all of it is this.
The question remains, if everybody, especially the big players, who wanted all their gold delivered at the same time, it is physically impossible to do it.
Most gold that exists on the planet, there's more than one claim on each ounce of gold. There's several people that think that they have title to that same ounce of gold. I have said many, many, many times, over and over again, if you can't hold it, you don't own it.
The game can't go on forever because sooner or later people are going to demand their physical gold or silver, and that already is happening.
The lack of accountability in gold sales by Western central banks hasn't been a concern so far. But as more and more buyers of gold have started to demand physical delivery, central banks that have oversold or loaned out their country's gold will find themselves caught in a major scandal. The result of such fraudulent activity means buyers of gold, be they individuals, pension or hedge funds, or even entire nations, could be ripped off for billions of dollars.
It's a little similar than the Murdoch scandal here at Fox News in London.
Oh, really? A Murdoch scandal? What?
It's a relationship between press, big money, and the politicians. And
I cannot believe it.
Don't get corrected until they blow up.
Okay, I might.
Blew up. The gold market is going to blow up, and I think will be a bigger scandal than either of them because it's a worldwide financial situation.
Exactly. I might destroy all that so we can rebuild it better.
And the central bankers, the only trick they know.
Oh, who would have thought? A Murdoch scandal.
They have no other trick. So as long as we keep looking to them to be our leaders and solve the problem, how can we expect anything else? That's the only trick they know.
Exactly.
But the only trick other trick there is to stop inflating and to go back to a sound currency. And that would say, they say, oh no, we can't do that.
Oh, it crashed.
Can't do that because it would put them all out of business.
Fuck me, life.
They wouldn't be able to continue the Ponzi scheme.
Even with cracks forming in the current financial system,
that's a shame.
Governments are in fact just more steps down the road to disaster.
Let's do it again. Oh, yeah, I know.
There is still something you can do to protect your family and yourself.
You cannot turn to a Ponzi schemer and ask him to run a real business because he doesn't know how. So you can't
America.
turn to all of these Ponzi
Fake it
schemers
until you
and
make it.
governments who are inflating the currency and say, well, let's solve the crisis in some other way. They don't know how. So the solution is to quit depending on the same people with the same mentality to solve our problem.
If governments won't go back on a gold standard, individuals can go back on the gold standard all by themselves. Politicians can create fiat money at will. That's why it's fiat.
That's what we're doing with the crypto. Everyone does their own shit, but they don't understand what they're doing.
Politicians and bureaucrats and central bankers, when you can just have something real that has intrinsic value.
Something real?
And that is going to remain scarce.
Would you rather have gold or fiat currency? And we see what's happening in the world, and obviously people are starting to figure out that gold is likely to sustain its value way more than a piece of paper is.
It's not that the price of gold is going up.
Much
the value of
better.
the dollar is going down. The price remains constant in terms of human effort and purchasing power. An ounce of gold today will buy
destroying all that
2,000 years ago.
to recreate something healthier.
It takes so much human effort to get out and refine the same human effort that it took to do certain things 2,000
I
years
destroyed
ago.
so much that I even destroyed that.
Stability. How much effort does it take?
Gold is financial insurance. And the thing about it is you own it because you want to be protected. And, you know, you just have to have it if you want to have or sleep at night because there's nothing else. You know, some catastrophic event happens, and we've seen them, how you can be protected.
Prep.
The current financial system may be dying, but where there is chaos, there is also opportunity. As the old model falls apart, the door may be open for great prosperity.
It's clearly not the end of the world. It's probably not even the end of America. For many countries, this is going to be the beginning of an economic
This
boom.
is the beginning.
A giant burden being lifting off
The
their shoulders,
beginning.
where the world no longer has
This
to
is the
loan
beginning.
trillions of dollars to Americans so that we
That's
can
much
continue to
better.
consume
Look at that.
what we don't produce. When
And now
this
I
comes to an
can,
end,
if I really
the
want to
world
have
will benefit.
more
So it is not something that we
details,
should
I
fear.
can.
We should embrace it as a world.
This is the greatest wealth transfer in history. If we have a global currency crisis, then you're going to see a greater wealth transfer than has ever happened in all of history. It's all going to happen at once. Therefore, it's the greatest opportunity.
We have millions of people now taking an interest in what is money, the question of what is money, what should it be, and they're learning, especially a lot of young people.
Young people, you've been screwed for so long. Now you need to learn.
As it has a million times before.
Okay,
Commuters
that's
will
pretty
wake up and travel to their offices to begin the day's work. Farmers will tend to their
much
crops,
better. Hey,
and construction
I don't know
workers will
from
build
how
new
much vertices or faces I'm going to how many, but
be the same. In 2008, the world was given a wake-up call. The biggest financial
are
crisis
you
in human
awake?
history was delayed by the same poor decisions that brought it about in the first place. What that massive bailout bought us was not a solution, but merely time. Time for the people responsible to wring the last few dollars out of a dying system. But also, for those able to see the cliff edge approaching, time to protect themselves and their families from the imminent plunge. And in the end, that time may prove to be the most valuable commodity of all.
Oh really? Time? What do you mean?
History where the safe haven asset for the last 5,000 years simultaneously becomes the asset class that has the greatest single potential gains in purchasing power. We're in one of these cycles right now where money is the best investment. Get out of currency, buy money, and you're probably going to be able to buy a whole lot more stuff later. But the best thing that people can do of all is really to take on their own responsibility for getting financially educated. This is the most important thing. Don't let the banks and the brokerage houses and other people guide all of your
Not
decisions.
much has
Find out what's going on
changed,
for yourself,
but
yourself.
so many less vertices just for a basic table. And that's how you improve your performances, people. I might actually have this and this and this in a different color with a different material, so it adds detail without changing much. Thank you all you people for talking shit like that. No, I'm joking. I guess it's useful. There you go, details without changing much. Okay, done. Build. I'm gonna stop here because I'm gonna go for a walk, and I'll come back sometime in the afternoon because it's already 11 a.m. I'm gonna get some lunch, get some wood for the fire, and test the build and see how it's going, and I'll